Hi, everyone. This is Bob Sorrentino from Italian Roots and Genealogy. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel and our blog and our Facebook group and our newsletter and our great sponsors, Abitativa Casa, Italy Rooting, and Phil Italy. And my guest today is Christian Meehan. So welcome, Christian. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Bob.
My pleasure. And it's great to have some young people on every now and then. So you have you sent me, I guess about 60 some odd pages of, your family history and everything like that. But for everybody listening, where's your family from in Italy and when did they arrive in North America?
So, like many Italian Americans, I'm kind of a big mix of a lot of Italy. And actually, I'll start off by saying I'm 1/4 Irish, but I do have 3 Italian grandparents. My dad is half Italian, and his mother came from Friuli after the war, after World War II, because her father, my great-grandfather, he was a soldier in the Italian army, and they came to Toronto, Canada after the war. And then on my mom's side, she's 100% Italian, and they're more like the traditional New York Italian, coming from the South, from Sicily, Campania. Even there's a little bit of Lazio, and there's a really interesting part of Veneto, an ancestor who took part in the Risorgimento. So lots of stuff I've dug into, but yeah, that's kind of the background.
Yeah, no, it was very interesting, some of the things. And am I right that one of your, I guess, great grandfathers, was he with Garibaldi?
Yeah, so there have been a few articles written about him. You can even find material online. I wouldn't call him famous, but he was definitely a player in the Risorgimento. I believe it was his son wrote a biography about him, and his son talked about, he was with Garibaldi's 1000 expedition, which went down to conquer Sicily and go up through all that. But the historical sources, that might not have been true. What we do know is he was born, I think, 1842 in what was then the Habsburg, Austria, northeast Italy in Veneto. He was born in Vicenza. And so that probably, there were the currents of Italian nationalism. So he did become a patriot, fought in the wars of independence up in the north. But I don't know if he was part of the 1000 expedition.
Yeah, that's an interesting past. It's funny. We were going through Campania to Molise, and our driver said, "I'm going to stop here by this bar because this is where Garibaldi and the king really met to discuss the Italian, Risorgimento. They weren't on white horses in the countryside. They were at a bar, and it was like this little middle of nowhere place,
I can picture it now, but and it's interesting because I have this Risorgimento part of my past, but now you see the Italian flags in the background. I'm proud, very proud to be Italian, but the more I learn about the history of how the country was founded, and actually I've gotten more in touch with my Catholic faith as well, I'm a little more skeptical of the Garibaldi narrative now.
Yeah, I mean, my paternal grandmother comes from 2 noble families, and I often wonder, because they didn't lose, they lost lands and stuff like that, but they didn't lose any money or they didn't lose any prominence, if you know what I mean. They were still, I guess, part of the gentry or whatever you want to call it,
I had a French roommate. So kind of a little bit about my story. Like my first time coming to Italy was through a study abroad. In university, living in Venice. And that's when I really fell in love with Italy. And I had a roommate from France, from Marseille, and his name was Tony Di Campo. And so I thought, that sounds Italian. Apparently his family, after, they took the side of the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, and they kind of fought against the new Kingdom of Italy, and they were kicked out, and I guess they went to France.
Well, yeah, and my 4th great-grandmother, she married the Duke of Capricotta, but she, at some point, after Napoleon, just before, she left her family and married this French officer. And then she came back, And then, to your point, she was exiled to Paris at some point. So I don't know if it had to do with, this thing with the French officer, or she had supported, she was against Garibaldi or Napoleon or however. It wouldn't have been Garibaldi, it was too early.
Hmm.
But, it's a lot of these stories are so fuzzy.
Yeah.
So your mom, her family came from Friuli. There was one other person I interviewed from Friuli, because a lot of people don't even know Friuli is part of Italy.
Yeah.
They've never heard of it, but it is one of the regions. So did they? Well, let me ask you rather than try and lead you. So what made them come? I mean, did they have other family here, or how'd that work?
So, and by the way, it was my father's mother. So my
Your father's mother.
mhm. And yeah, it was, I believe, 1948, around that time. She was a little girl, and just the war had obviously devastated the country. And like most immigrant stories, the father, so my great grandfather came over first and obviously got work in Toronto. And they always told me like the Italians built Toronto during that time. And yeah, he just brought the family over. There's a beautiful passport picture, because I believe back at that time, like, the mother would take the picture for her passport with the kids. And so there's a beautiful picture of that with my grandmother as a young girl. And yeah, because Friuli it's definitely provincial, and especially at that time. And they just live, even though it's the north and now they have a good standard of living, I can imagine back at the time just devastation.
Yeah, well, yeah, after the war, and my uncle wound up in outside of Toronto for 4 years because they couldn't come right into the United States, even though all his brothers and sisters were here. My uncles fought in the war. He still had to wait in Toronto with his family. I think he got there around 49 or 50, and then came back in 54. But huge Italian population,
Oh,
especially
yeah.
from their hometown.
And even in Toronto, there's like, so you have the Frulan, and they have like a community called Fame Frulan. I think it still exists. But even they are so different from some of the later waves of mostly Calabrian immigrants. And so, like, in my family, we have some Frulan who married some Calabres, and, North Italy, South Italy. I could even tell you a story actually about my father. So my father's half Irish, half North Italian, Friuli. My mother, almost all Southern Italy. And when my parents were getting married, my great grandfather from Friuli told my father to be careful with those Sicilians when he was marrying my half Sicilian mother.
Well, I interviewed Dr. Luignaro, who actually won a Nobel Prize. He said they moved to this place on Long Island, 5 towns, and he said there was mostly all Jewish, and I know the area well. He said there was one other Italian family on the block. And he said my father wouldn't talk to them because they were like Barese, or they were Calabrese or something like that. He said, no, I'm not talking to them. So how did your parents meet then? If half part of the family was from Canada, the other part was from, I guess, New York or Brooklyn. Yeah.
So they met at what you could maybe consider the most natural meeting place, Buffalo, New York.
Halfway, right?
Because yeah, so my mom's parents found their way to Buffalo through work, and then my dad was born in Canada, but really he's lived in America since he was a child. My father's father actually was in the NHL, and so he moved around, played a lot in the US, and kind of settled in Buffalo. He was on the Sabres. So yeah, that's how they met.
So what was his name?
Jerry Meehan,
Yeah, I know. I,
Gerry.
I don't recognize the name. I know my brother-in-law knows it because my brother-in-law was a hockey freak forever. Actually, they didn't like any other team but the New York Rangers, and used to sit in the blue seats and yell at everybody.
Great
So
sport.
where do you live now? You're up in the Buffalo area?
No, this might sound very surprising to say now, but I'm in Rome, Italy.
I didn't know you were in Italy. Oh, fantastic. Oh, that's great. That's great. I wish I had known last couple of times we were there before. So
But
how
yeah,
so so how'd you wind up there? What do you do?
Yeah, so pretty much after my study abroad, I fell in love with Italy and I said, okay, I have to move here. Like this, something is pulling me here.
Mm,
And so I spent the next 5 years or so working on my dual citizenship. And luckily that went through about 4 years ago before, and I can just show it right here, the golden document. And so I moved to Rome a little more than 3 years ago. It was September 1st, 2022. And then I moved here actually without a job, but the morning of my flight, I got a response from a English language school wanting me to interview and train with them. And within a month, I was working, and I've been teaching English for 3 years.
that's fantastic. I have a really good friend from grammar school. She moved there. I guess she's probably there about 5 years now. She lives in Salerno, and I wish I had gotten mine long ago. I'm so bummed out, like a lot of people. Not so much. I was originally eligible through both sides, my father and my mother, but then they changed the law, and because my father's father naturalized when my father was 16, I was no longer eligible through there. But my mother, because I was born in 1951. I'm eligible. My brother's not. And they never naturalized. Neither one of my mother's parents naturalized. So I'm still there. But now they've raised the prices again. I was going through an attorney, and it was €600 if for um, myself and my two kids, who now are no longer eligible. And now they made it €600 per person.
Well, I worked with a service provider, so I forked out a lot of money. I spent those 5 years, and I would pay in small installments. And really, when I think about the way that they helped me, because I wanted someone to hold my hand through the process. But like I was going back far with my documents, especially I was going through my great grandfather even. But now I look at it as the best investment of my lifetime, maybe.
Without question. I mean, I wish I had done it years ago. It never dawned on me, and I didn't start doing this. I mean, I started doing this 10 years ago, but it didn't dawn on me. Let me
Mhm.
just say it that way. And what really bums me out is they just gave Maria Bartiromo
Yeah.
Italian citizenship. And I just sent a thing on Maloney's Facebook page and said, hey, what did she do? I know she's a big, she's on Fox News here and she does all of this stuff, but honestly, I don't see her doing a lot to promote Italian heritage or Italian American heritage. I mean, we all know she's Italian American, but I said, I've interviewed over 300 people in Italy here. I could trace my roots back 1,000 years. So how do you classify for special circumstances? I know nothing's going to happen of it, but I had a vent.
Well, even I was always a little upset before I got my citizenship, obviously, about Robert De Niro. Like, he's got the name, he's famous, but he's a quarter Italian. Like, someone like me, if you just look at my name, you don't think I'm Italian at all, but I'm actually three quarters. He's the opposite. He has the name, and he looks kind of Italian.
Well, yeah, and like I said, I can, my paternal grandmother I could document her family back to the first Caracciolo family in Naples. It's on the Libro d'Oro. So what'd your parents think when you said, "Hey, I'm going to Rome"?
Yeah, this was a long time coming. Like, they knew how dedicated I was, especially through the citizenship process. And well, it's actually interesting we're talking now because I'm actually almost decided that I'm going to be coming back to the US because I think they were always like, okay, let him get it out of his system. Like, he loves it there. Even my grandmother told me that my mom had told her he'll be there a year. Like, he won't even make it a year. I don't know if it was in a negative way, but I've loved it. 3 years, I've traveled to so many European countries, but I'm kind of at that point in my life where, well, now I want to settle down. Like, I've done the traveling in Europe, and and I'll always come back here, but we'll see.
Well, what's great is that, you have the citizenship, so you could always, you'll be able to pass it down to, if you have children, to your children. I mean, that's the real reason I was doing it in the first place. Not for me, I'm 75, but for the kids to have it, and if they had kids, or if they, even if they want to spend some time there, or whatever. I mean, the advantages are fantastic, for
Yeah.
schooling and stuff like that. I mean, it's unbelievable. And plus, you could work in any other European country, right?
Yeah, I was thinking about like my life. That's the thing. I'm trying to get more structure and do that. But then part of me like will travel to a new country. Like I went to Poland in August, and then I was telling everyone, "Oh, I'm going to move to Poland. It's beautiful there, but maybe not so much in winter."
I'm sure it's quite cold there in the winter.
Yeah.
Well, we had gone, I guess it's about 4 years ago now, we had gone 25 years ago, and then we hadn't gone back. Another thing I
Poland.
regret. No, to Italy. And this last time we went with my daughter and her fiance, and they like, you know, at the end of the 7 days that they were there, it was like, we're moving here. We're moving. I said, it's not that simple. It's not quite that simple.
And it's not all dolce vita. Like I don't want to be the one to talk bad about Italy, but every country has its problems, and just a simple thing like I don't have air conditioning in my apartment. I could get another apartment or something like that, but then even just the renting in Rome, like everyone is renting like under the table, unregistered contracts, and just even small things like, do you know what I think it's called parcheggiatore abusivo is?
No, no.
So one night I'm going to dinner with a friend in Rome. He's driving, and we find parking. We go in there and we get out of the car, and there's a guy there like asking us for money, like a parking attendant, but he's not wearing anything. Like he's not official. And my friend said, "Oh, I don't have anything, but when we come back, I'll get you." And so I was like, "Wait, what was that?" And he said, "Oh yeah, this is parcheggiatore abusivo. It's really illegal, but they like if you don't pay them something, like you don't know what could happen to your car. Like I don't know, like a window being broken or something." So it's like just this culture of like not really having laws that are always followed is not always the best.
Oh, wow. I never heard of that. I once paid a guy to watch my car in New York City. He was, we were in Little Italy. I had this MG, and I said, uh, I said to the guy, it was one of the urban street people. I said, "Hey, would you keep an eye on the car for me?" I don't know if I gave him $5, whatever I gave him. He said, "Sure." Well, I came back, and he was watching the car, only he was sleeping next to it, but he was watching it.
But
Now,
there's
another time in Corona, I had same MG, and we were going into this restaurant, and I had the top down. I didn't put the alarm on, and my girlfriend at the time, my wife, said, "You're gonna leave the car like that?" And I said, "It's safe there. Don't worry about it. Nobody's gonna touch it." And there was a guy outside the restaurant standing there like this, and I said, "Hey, is that car safe like that? Ain't nobody gonna touch that car." She said, "How'd you know he's gonna?" I said, "'Cause Tough Tony owns the restaurant. That's how I do it." We said.
nice.
Um, so yeah, but I see what you're saying. I mean, I know a couple of people. I know one person, she goes back and forth. She mainly lives in Italy, but she goes back and forth. But, that's a good point, though, for anybody who does either wanna move there or spend some, time there. What's the best advice you would give them?
I would do like a month or 2 month trial to test it out and see if you like it. But I don't know. It's tough for me to give advice because I'm learning every day, even. I mean, yeah, there's so many. You just have to. Okay. I'll tell you with a little other story. So the apartment I had before this, it was six of us in kind of like a former B&B, and we all had our own private bathroom. It was okay. but my bathroom broke. Like the toilet, like they had to shut off the water, like they had to fix things and call the plumber. Well, that's another thing. You don't want to be doing that in Rome because I learned how terrible that system is. Like the plumber, like he would say, "Okay, mo arrivo," like I'm arriving, or something like that, and then 2 hours later, or like no, an hour later, I would be like, "Where are you? You said you're arriving," and he said, "I'll be there soon." And then like 3 hours goes by, and then that becomes tomorrow. My bathroom was broken for like 2 weeks. So many things. So, but that taught me like an incredible lesson, which was just like, just be chill, like don't have high standards. I know it sounds terrible and almost like kind of third worldy because like everyone should have a working bathroom, but like to not be attached to like material things, like lower your material expectations and just go get a spritz and have fun with friends that night. Like I don't know, you have to really change your expectations if you are coming from America. And part of the reason I want to move back now is, well, I don't know if I want, I'm like, I became fully Italian because now I want to move abroad from Italy, raise
That's
my
funny.
standard of living a little again. And
No, but that's a good point because I've heard that before. That I mean, definitely the pace is completely different, than ours. I mean, I see the advantages of you could go to the grocery store and get a bottle of wine for 2 or 3 euros. I mean, that's a bonus. And this last trip, I mean, big cities are big cities, right? So, your experience in Rome is probably not that different than, things that happen in New York or Chicago or Boston. May not be parking, but it may be something else. You have to be I guess, aware of all of these kinds of things. But what I found was when you're not in the big cities, like this last trip we were in Modena and Ferrara, the pace is, I mean, you feel like you're just so relaxed. You know what I mean?
yeah, in those cities, like, yeah, I'm speaking for Rome. Rome is chaos. It's beautiful in the city center, but all around it's chaos and a mess, kind of disorganization. But where you were, like Modena, Ferrara, like those are always at the top of the most livable cities in Italy list. Me personally, I kind of want a little more of the Mediterranean culture when it comes to Italy. So I don't know if I would love to be in the north, but it's definitely much more European, much more. I don't know. Maybe I could try it out.
Well, to your point though, like even when we were in Bari, it was different than Rome or Naples, for example. The pace again was slower. I mean, it was I guess there was some touristy parts to it, like this restaurant area and stuff like that. But you felt very, very safe. I mean, we felt very, very safe there
Yeah.
in Bari. And same thing with Taranto. There's not much to do there. There's hardly any tourists in Taranto, but it is a beautiful kind of place. And the old city, and I tell everybody about the old cities. You're going to get lost there, no matter how hard you try. You're not going to make it through the streets.
Yeah, the South. One of the best trips I did was to the Aeolian Islands. Actually, kind of getting back to a little bit about the family history. My mother's father, so my maternal grandfather, 100% Sicilian, but it was his grandparents who immigrated to the US, to Brooklyn in the 1890s, I think. And one of his parents came from Messina, the city center, and another one, and his mother came from Salina, which is one of the Aeolian Islands. And I spent a week there going to the different islands. I mean, I would definitely recommend that. Like, for me, it's better than the Amalfi Coast. I'm biased, but it's incredibly beautiful, the best food, and the tourists. Yeah, it does get touristy in August in the summer, but they're Italians. They're not, like, it's much more local.
Yeah, we found that. We found that kind of in Sorrento. So they came very early, the 1890s. That's pretty early.
Yeah, I believe it was the 1890s. and they're a unique story because like this document that I sent to you is pretty much it's part of an oral history project I did for my master's in history. I had like 6 hours of footage of interviewing all my grandparents, and I turned it into this document using their words directly. And so, yeah, my grandfather's grandparents from Sicily, they came over, and it sounds like they weren't the typical story of like the peasant farmer. No, they were involved in shipping, I believe in Sicily, but definitely when they were in the US. And I'm sure just the life they lived, Messina, the islands, they were used to boats and everything. And she was entrepreneurial too. She owned a shop in, I think, in Brooklyn. And just to see that spirit lives on in my grandfather, like he has a boat now and he loves boating and he was very successful in business. So there's a lot of like stories like that that go against the traditional narrative of just like, the stereotype, the peasant from the countryside.
Yeah, yeah, and there was some of that, but that's really early for somebody with that kind of background,
Yeah.
and it may have been just kind of a special thing. Because to your point, most of them that came after 1900 were basically just peasants and farmers and things like that. I don't like the word peasants, but because they were hard workers, but they were farmers and
I was trying to think
Gar
of,
yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
the translation of contadino. I don't know how do you capture that? It's more than farmer. It's like,
Yeah, yeah, no, you're right, you're right. It's funny, my mother's family, as I was going through the records in Torito, it was everybody was a contadino or a felitrice, a seamstress, and that's all they were, And then
yeah,
finally, I came out like I don't know, the late 1700s. I found a guy who was a like I guess the equivalent of a park ranger or something like that. I was like, boy, finally somebody did something different. There was a different kind of family structure, I suppose, And growing up in an Italian household, I always like to ask this question: did you eat a lot of Italian food? Was everything,
like, to be honest, I was born in Buffalo, but then moved to Atlanta when I was 5. Italian American desert, not so many Italians.
I was going to say that there's no pork stores in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, now I think it's changing a little bit. You can get some stuff at a few places, but I grew up post-ethnic America. Like, I mean, I always knew I was Italian the way that I was raised. And we did have, you know, pasta dishes, like my grandmother's sauce, really good on special occasions, though. And so I definitely felt Italian, the Catholic faith, all of that. But like me, it's almost like I went from post-ethnic straight to Italy. Like I almost skipped the Italian American phase
Mhm.
because recently, a couple weeks ago, I was in the New York metro area visiting for San Gennaro and I was staying with some family. And for example, my friend from New Jersey took me out there, showed me around some stuff. And for me, like, that was completely new. Like, that was Italian America, finding these like older men playing bocce, speaking Sicilian dialect in a park somewhere in New Jersey. Like, I wasn't raised with that.
Yeah, our club has an indoor bocce court, 2 indoor bocce courts, as a matter of fact, which is
Nice.
air conditioned and everything. It's really nice. So so do you think, because you said you have, history major and all of that, because that was my subject, history. I mean, English and math, I was horrible at science. But do you think that led you to wanna find more about your family and their history?
Yeah, it was all happening around the same time. Like there was the like before I studied abroad, I switched from philosophy to history because I kind of got sick of philosophy because it's like I love it, don't get me wrong, but I don't like modern philosophy a lot, like kind of arguing about language. And history really attracted me because I wanted to understand the world, like why things are the way they are. And at that same time, I was also interested in my own family history. It really started with me having to take a language course actually to fulfill a requirement. And I saw they offered Italian and I said, I'm Italian, my family tells me. So, and then I took that, which led to another class, which led to a study abroad. And like, I completely believe in destiny, like things happen for a reason, because like within 1 or 2 years after I left university, Georgia State University, all the program was canceled. The study abroad was canceled. Like, I got my foot in the door, the perfect time to get those experiences. And then even with the citizenship, like if this had happened 3 years later, I would have been like today, I wouldn't be eligible.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I recently found out that my school, St. John's, that they have a campus in Rome. I had no idea. Just found that out recently.
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, that's just super, that's just super to find out. Just last question for you is, for people who want to, because I think it's fabulous that you've interviewed people, but for somebody who's thinking about starting them out, and especially a younger person that wants to learn about their family, what's your advice for where to start and how to start?
Definitely start with family. I mean, over my life, well, and I'm only 30, but like I just realized more and more the importance of family. And it really all started with my great grandfather, Silvio Quaresima. He was born 1915, Brooklyn, and he lived till he was 103. And
Oh, that's
great genes.
fabulous.
And
Wow.
and so he passed away when I was 23. Like, I had him
Wow.
longer than most people have their grandparents.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he, like, when I was younger, he always used to tell us all these stories about growing up during the Depression, just being an Italian in New York at that time. And this is going to sound terrible, but like, I didn't appreciate it at the beginning. I would just hear him kind of continuing on. And, if you're a 10-year-old child, you don't really appreciate it. But as I got, like, every year that went by, I was like, wait, he is so special as just even a historical figure. And then so he passed away like as I was finishing university, and I was also getting into history around that time. And I told myself the next time I see him for a longer period of time, and he lived in New York, me in Atlanta, we didn't see each other so often at that point. I told myself I want to interview him and ask him the questions I want to ask. Like, I want to know everything. I didn't get to do that. So everyone who has the living sources, like, we can read in the books. And I know oral history, some people have selective memory. Also, that has its, we need to integrate it with what's in the books. But there's nothing more special than those stories. And luckily, there's a lot of footage of him speaking about it, so we've preserved a lot of it. But just focus on your family. Like, you'll be able to get into their minds and have them remember things they didn't even know they remember.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, I used to sit and play cards with my grandmother and all of that, and, I was a kid, 14, 15, probably even earlier than that, but I never thought, of course, back then to ask these questions and to ask about it. And, that generation, they didn't really volunteer a lot about Italy and coming and the boat ride. I mean, people say to me, if you go talk to anybody, dead or alive, who would you talk to? I was like, my grandmother. Who else would I want to talk to? Just to get some of these unanswered questions and what it was like to arrive. And there was I don't know if you heard of him. He was just a super guy, Anthony Riccio. I interviewed him, and I'll send you the link with his interview. But he was 22, just out of college, 1970, 71, something like that. His wife, his girlfriend at the time, said that there's an ad in the Boston Globe for an advocate for Italians. You have to speak Italian. You speak Italian. Why'd you go for the job? And he did, and he got this job. But he was astute enough at the time to record these people who came even a little bit before your great grandfather, like 1900s, and they were all in their late 60s, 70s, maybe even 80. And he recorded all of them. He got all of their stories, and he wrote several books on it. But the point is, he had this oral history from these people from mostly southern Italy that lived in Boston's North End, and worked in these Italian businesses or worked in mills and things like that. Um, but yeah, it's that's why I do this. We can't let this disappear. We
Yes,
really can't. Um,
absolutely.
and that's why it's great when I find young people like you to be able to talk about it and they're still enthused about it. And you mentioned earlier, I'm a firm believer in nothing happens by accident. Some of us are just we're picked to do this.
And if I could say even one more thing, because now living in Italy, I know maybe I'll move back, but I've kind of reestablished a connection with the town that my great grandfather's parents came from, San Vito Romano. By car, it's less than an hour from Rome to the east, kind of in the hills. And I go there. They have really nice Christmas village, kind of Christmas markets, and all sorts of festivals and beautiful things. And just to make that connection, like from where we came from to me today, because we have to know where we came from, and we have to take the best things from our ancestors to continue them forward. And so for me, San Vito Romano, even the comune that approved my citizenship, I went through San Vito Romano. So just, if another piece of advice, if you can establish like that origin in Italy where your family comes from, like, I know the mayor now. He's in my cell phone. Like, I come there and he says, "Oh, what's up?" and all that. And so just to go full circle, like, I think it has helped me a lot as a person with understanding myself.
No, I know exactly what you mean, and they're thrilled that we want to know this.
Yes, they want us also to come back and revive the towns, which I'm kind of even a little skeptical of, because San Vito Romano is not really touristy, even though it absolutely could be. But I don't know. I'd like to get some property there, maybe open up an Airbnb.
But yeah, no, if I was younger, we would definitely would have had a place there if we
Yeah.
were younger. It's just too hard to do now. But yeah, you never know. Never say never. Well, thanks, Christian. I appreciate it. It was great fun, great stories, and look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And until next time.